Brian Wilson, Mary Catherine Ham, Brian Neiman, today's newsmakers, and you, the Morning Majority.
105.9 FM.
And AM 630.
WMAL.
8:37 on the Morning Majority. Brian Neiman and Brian Wilson still gone, but I'm here with Jimmy Pethokoukis of American Enterprise Institute. Thank you for getting up early and hanging out with me today. It's been good times.
Oh, it's fantastic.
And it's going to get even better. You know why?
It will, yes.
Because we have Larry
In
Kudlow.
seconds, yes.
Larry Kudlow on the phone, host of the Kudlow Report on CNBC and the Larry Kudlow Show on WMAL Saturdays at 7 p.m. Good morning, Larry.
Good morning, Mary Catherine. Hello, Jimmy P.
Good morning.
So I want to ask you about a little bit of news we haven't gotten to yet. So I like to call it Keystone Extra Small, XS. There is a part of this transnational pipeline that will go through because it does not require an okay from the president. Is that correct? I know you talked to the TransCanada CEO last night about it. What's the deal?
Yeah, it's interesting. They're going to move there. They're going to put a pipeline together from Oklahoma, Cushing, Oklahoma, down to the Gulf Coast. And he's okay there because they don't require a presidential permit. There's nothing special. They do, however, require some regulatory permits. Now, I talked to him about that last night. Russ Girling's the CEO of TransCanada, and he was optimistic that he would get his regulatory permits. And the White House did issue a pretty positive statement on this yesterday. So that just leaves the Canadian, down to Montana, etc. And by the way, getting oil from Cushing, Oklahoma, down to the Gulf would be helpful because there's a tremendous backlog of oil. I mean, they're swimming in oil down there, but they can't get it to market. They can't get it to the refineries down in the Gulf Coast or to ship it, let's say, up to the Northeast. So prices are probably artificially high in the Brent crude. There's too much demand for European Brent crude, which has made those prices too high. And that probably helped the whole oil price story if they get that through.
I thought there was nothing we could do. I thought that's what the president said. There was nothing we could do about oil price. It was beyond the kin of man to deal with high oil price. There was nothing you can, but apparently there's at least a little something we can do.
Yeah, there's more than a little something, and you're right. Drill, pipeline would help. Of course, the tragedy of this thing, and I talked to him about this, while they're releasing or they're repeating or they're resubmitting their presidential permit request to go north-south from Canada down through Montana and so forth, there also looks like they're going to be building an east-west pipeline, which is going to go to the Pacific. I mean, Girling told me last night that there's so much oil coming out of the oil sands and elsewhere that they will have plenty of the stuff to ship to China and the rest of Asia. There's nothing we can do about that now. Maybe that would have happened in any event, but my suspicion is if we had let them go and run the pipeline down from Canada to the USA on those north-south routes, maybe they wouldn't have been so quick to go to China. I don't know. But the Canadian Prime Minister Harper has signed a memorandum of understanding with China. So there you have it. We're going to help China, and some of it's going to benefit us, and we'll see if they ever complete the pipeline.
Is this the kind of thing where this small portion of the pipeline will get done due to the president's very kind decision not to put his boot down on their throat on these regulatory parts, and then he'll say, hey, look what I did, isn't this super?
Yeah, he probably will. That's right. I mean, the funny thing about Obama's energy policy, when he talked about all of the above, I mean, that was the Republican energy policy cry, and I was very taken by that. And, the trouble with that is that he's not, they're not really following through on a lot of the permits. They're doing some permitting. They're just way behind and their backlogs that are building up, especially on federal land.
Well, the president's idea of an all-of-the-above energy policy is both green energy and clean energy and alternative energy. He wants to do all three of those things.
Well, I mean, that, if you think about it, George W. Bush wanted an all-the-above policy. John McCain and lots of Republicans always ran on all the above, and that's been the battle cry in recent years: oil, gas, nuclear, biofuel. I don't know about algae. Algae was kind of a new one, but I guess algae's in the mix. What Obama thinks algae someday will be 17% of our energy. I think he's nuts on that, with all due respect. But whatever. There is some progress being made on this. And I think this Cushing pipeline from Trans-Canada is going to be good. It'll be a good thing, and they're going to break ground on it. What did he say? I think he said they're going to break ground on it next year. I'm just worried, as I always am, because they do speak with forked tongue in the White House, that while the presidential permit is not necessary, somehow EPA or the Interior Department will gum it up. I mean, I'm still worried. Russ Girling, the CEO, wasn't that worried about it, but we'll see. I'm waiting to see what happens there.
Well, there has already been some progress in the general shape of the economy over the past couple months. It's been his approval numbers are still fairly low, but it's been a good period for Barack Obama while the Republicans are fighting it out in the primary and their numbers go down. Will this uptick continue?
Looks like it. I mean, we had a good pending home sales number yesterday, and that series is now the best in 2 years. And when you look at all the data points, including jobless claims and non-farm payrolls and ISMs, we had a good manufacturing report from the Dallas Fed yesterday. I think the answer is yes, and I think that we're probably shifting into a 3% growth economy, and profits are holding up. I mean, so much of this is the resiliency of the private business, free enterprise sector. So much of this, in fact, probably in spite of Washington policies, because you have monumental, and I mean monumental, tax hikes coming at the end of this year and the early part of 2013. I mean, the whole tax code blows up. The individual code gets turned back. The corporate code is going to take some big hits, the alternative minimum tax. And obviously Congress is not going to deal with that in any way, shape, or form this year. It doesn't look like it. They're not even going to have a budget, for heaven's sakes. So you're going to blow up the tax code next year, and if it doesn't blow up in the right way, that could be very harmful for this. But I would say right now, yeah, I'm moderately optimistic. We're not booming at 5 or 6%, but we are growing, and the stock market is picking that up.
Right. I mean, the Dow's up, about 1,200 points or so this year. How much do you worry about either what's still going on in Europe or war in the Middle East? Israel, Iran, as being two things could still derail not just the market, but the economy in general.
You know, I'm not so worried about Europe. I think you're going to get another announcement this week. The European Central Bank is going to enlarge its 3-year emergency loan program. That's been a great success, by the way, giving to, I think, something like several hundred banks, 250 banks are getting these 3-year loans. They're cheap loans. The banks can go and finance their bond positions, their sovereign debt, their Greek bond positions. You know, I think that story just kind of muddles along. I have no crystal ball for the Middle East, and if there were to be a war, and if oil spikes to $200 a barrel, that is sure going to be a short-run problem. There's no question about that. On the other hand, without that kind of blow-up, you know, I think the oil situation is a little overrated right now. I think it's a little exaggerated. It actually comes from supply bottlenecks, and a lot of that comes from the U.S., and a lot of that comes down from Cushing, Oklahoma, into the Gulf Coast and up into various refineries in the northeast